Dámy a pánové, do třetice krásné odpoledne, že by už fungoval. Takže do třetice všeho dobrého nejen s mikrofonem, ale i s naším programem, ve kterém se přepneme do angličtiny a předávám rovnou slovo Honzovi Besedovi, který tento blok bude řídit. Děkuju.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, thank you very much, Jakub. So I would like, hope the discussion will be less danger. And our topic is flexibility. And I see that Katka is very flexible, yeah, even in her dress, because sometimes flexibility could be also if you can do a rope, you have the figure from gymnastic. So we will speak about, we would like to show some inspiration from abroad. And my name is Jan Besed, I'm from Center for Education Studies. And also one reason why flexibility is also important, because we need more students, as we have just fresh data from Eurograduate survey. We say that students, or let's say higher education graduates, are more active in our society and they are more pro-democratic. So this is also not just for the, let's say, market and job, let's say labor market reasons, but also for the sustainability of our societies. So I would like to introduce you Mr. Eltio Beizen, and Eltio is very flexible because he's also multi-oriented. He's a philosopher, yeah. He was driving truck. No, it's true, it's true. And now he's as a chief product of owner quality assurance at Higher Education University of Utrecht. Is also driving force of quality assurance at this institution, but not only at level of institution, but also at European level, because he's a self-appointed ESG ambassador, and he also like to, let's say, showing importance of ESG around the world. This year he was in Pakistan, for instance. So that's about a couple words about Eltio. Monika Barton, even it sounds little easy, but Kay is Czech, so she's from Czechia, and she studied at University of Economics and Business. She is, I think, promoter of Heutagogy, which is also self-directed learning, which is connected with flexibility. But she found that we have probably enough flexibility, so she tried to move somewhere. She moved, she was finally the wind of change sent her to New Zealand. So she's a little kiwi, yeah, and kiwi check now, yeah, kiwi check, and because of global warming, you know, we have kiwi here also now, and she also named her as a pra-academic, which means not academic from ancient times, yeah, but academic who connected things with academic things with practice, and currently she is a quality learning manager at AMBES, which is the biggest and oldest private Czech higher education institution. I would like to go to one quote. While it's very important, the flexibility. The guy which is behind me is probably, I don't know, because situation can change, the most oldest living man. His name is John Alfred Innswood, and this is a quote from his interview. You can look on different kind of news on YouTube. It's a very short video. You can see what's important, how to link for long life. And say the life is changing. It's a sort of ongoing experience, and always do best you can, whether you are learning something or whether you are teaching someone. So I think this is very important, let's say, motto for us. Give it all you've got, otherwise it's not worth bothering with this. So I think we can inspire by this guy because he has many experience. Then I would like to show another quote. This is a quote from Noha Ala Eldin. This is an Egypt writer and scientist, and I found this quote in this nice book. A nice book from Lucia Rohlíková. And I can recommend you this book. It's a very fresh book from last year, and it's her habilitation thesis, and it's about flexible learning and flexible forms of education in higher education sector. So I can really recommend you. You can learn how flexible can be systemized, etc. And there is a nice quote in each chapter. From the first chapter is the quote from Noha. And she said, the survivor is for those who are flexible. They are smart enough to adapt and they never give up. So some kind of inspiration. And now I would like to give you 3 small invitations. First is that on 20th May, it's Monday, we will organize a workshop, action group of for quality assurance of professional education study programs. This is the, let's say, registration form, or you can like ask me. When we would like to, in the afternoon, focusing on one thing which is connected with coming novel of Higher Education Act, is how we need, in the age of AI, how we'd like to change final state exams. What kind of reform, what could be risk. And one thing which is also could be also connected is flexibility, that we offer a methodology for external reflection of quality assurance of learning and teaching, which was discussed with the National Accreditation Bureau. And there is also linked to a website. And if you have like to know more, you can download it. And during the afternoon, in the evening maybe, or tomorrow, we can discuss it more. And last invitation is for the conference DISCO, which is not connected so much for flexibility, but maybe 2 things which can be interesting for you, or 3 things. This year we're focusing on the competencies, let's say digital entrepreneur sustainable competencies, how we can empower the students with these competencies in the age of AI. And I would like to invite you that we have 2 workshops focusing on AI. One is from colleagues from European Education Digital Hub, where was a squad which was discussing this topic, so we 2 hour workshops. And another workshop which is related to the assessment from colleagues from Hungary, their experience. And one thing which is still in the negotiation, there will be also probably colleagues from another Netherlands university, or university from Applied Science from Netherlands, which using the tool called ANS, which is helping, let's say, it could be used for assessment and maybe also flexibility of assessment. So that's, let's say, a very short introduction and some kind of invitation from me. And now I would like to give a floor, or maybe not floor and microphone to Eltio, and he will tell us a little more about what kind of change is just running in the Netherlands. And just maybe just one how will we going. Eltio will have presentation, Monica will have presentation, so make a notes if you would like to have a questions, maybe because you need to, let's say, make this question together, and there will be time for discussion before we will go for the evening, which we can discuss more deeply with the wine. Yeah, so welcome.
Yes, boss. Yes, thanks, Jan. Indeed, I try to be a bit flexible, so amongst others, I adapted my presentation a bit here. This morning and the beginning of this afternoon, after some comments of the panelists here and some of the questions, so I try to be as relevant as possible here. Of course, I do not know the Czechian circumstances. I understand a couple of things by now. I looked some things up beforehand, before I came here. But I know, I hope it's inspiring to you. So the title of my talk is how much flexibility is enough? Well, to give a little spoiler, I'm not sure I'm going to answer this question because it's probably unanswerable. But I'm going to go through it as anyways, and I'm going to focus on the national experiment on flexible learning design that we had in the Netherlands. So I'll give a short introduction about my institution, where I'm from, about myself. I'll go say something about flexibility that was already existing in the Netherlands, then what the national experiment was all about, how we implemented it in my institution, and what we learned from it, and how we're going further with flexibilization after the experiment. So my institution, so this is a quote from the minister when our former president of the board said goodbye. He said the ambition, and it's almost reality that behind every door in the region is an alumni from us. We have 38,000 students, almost 4,500 staff, and of course a QA team. So we have more than 100 degree programs. So we're really quite large. I don't even know the exact number because it's going up and up. So I don't know, it's 117 or so. I don't know, maybe 18. Those are, by the way, in from level 5 to 8. So short cycle higher education, bachelor's, master's, and very new as well, professional doctorates. Our staff is in basically 3 categories. We have the educational staff, we have researchers, and we have support staff. And our QA team, and I put this in because this is a QA conference, of course, so you might find it interesting. Our QA team is 18 persons. The most of those are advisors, giving advice to the educational teams, but as well to the research teams and as well to the support teams to have QA processes. So everywhere, not just on teaching and learning, but as well on the other activities. We have some people dedicated to institutional research. I call them usually our data nerds, so they really look at all the data coming in and how we analyze it and how we can use that in advice. And we have, and I personally like that as well, we have people from portfolio in the QA team. Often you see, I don't know how this is in Czechia, of course, but in the Netherlands, often portfolio people, so to say, are in the marketing department. We put them in the quality department. And I think that's very relevant, coming from the idea that quality is not just doing the things right, but as well doing the right things. So the choices we make in portfolio are quality choices. Couple of words about myself. I'm a senior advisor, leading a strategic innovation program for QA. This is indeed under the title Chief Product Owner. And I'm advising departments and I'm as well, by the way, advising leadership on quality policy and quality. Some other roles I have is we have I suppose it's more or less like this organization here, the National Network for Quality Assurance in Higher Education. I'm the president of that. I chair audit panels for external quality assurance, both in the Netherlands and abroad. I am within Eurashi. I'm not sure if everybody knows Eurashi, but maybe not. It's a European organization for professional higher education. So there's a community of practice. You're all welcome to join if you want to. I'm co-lead of that. And indeed, on a European level as well, I'm in a register committee for ECHAR, which is the European Quality Assurance Register, which is registering all the quality assurance agencies that comply with the ESG. And I'm indeed, as Jan said, I didn't put it here because it's a self-appointed title. I call myself the ESG ambassador to the Netherlands. That's nothing official. That is just because I like the ESG and I value it. I as well had lots of ideas and questions on the system conversation, but I won't go into that. So maybe we can have a discussion later tonight. My own personal background is in philosophy in business management and in quality management. And what is relevant there, because that is a bridge leading into what we had as a pre-existing flexibility. And I decided just this morning that it's basically there's 2 ways of flexibility, I think. So on content, flexibility on content, and flexibility on form. So maybe this is just me being a philosopher, but I like that distinction. Those individual agreements were existing, pre-existing choices that you could make as a student. So I did it myself when I studied philosophy. Philosophy was after the beginning, which everything is nice, it was a bit too abstract and too philosophical for me. So I wanted a bit more concrete. So I decided to, and someone told me, I guess, I don't know how I find out, that it was possible within the regulations to make your own individual agreement on what courses you do in your program. So minimal 50% of the courses of the credits basically should be from the standard program, but then you can pick and choose from different study programs from different faculties. You have to get a permit from that, from the examination board. They have to check if it's serious, if it's coherent program. But then you're allowed to do that. And I did that with philosophy. So I had a language philosophy as a major, I guess you would say. And I took all kinds of linguistical things from the psychology department, from general language studies, from all kinds of fields, and to do that. So that was one of a pre-existing flexibility. Of course, there's the orientation of higher education. That is, of course, as well flexibility. Do you go for the academic, for research-oriented, or for professionally oriented field of study? There is minors. I'm not sure. So if you know the concept, because it's not everywhere in Europe, and I'm not sure if this is you do know the concept. Good. So it's basically 1 semester, 30 ECTS credits within every bachelor. So in the Netherlands, every bachelor, there's 30 ECTS credits, which you can choose as a student what you want to do. And you can choose either to go in depth in your own fields of study, so then there's some kind of a specialization, or you can go somewhere else to some other faculties, to some other institution. You can go abroad to widen your scope. And of course, there's a specialization itself with elective courses. So those are all content forms of pre-exist or flexibility that were already existing before the experiment. And informed, of course, well, we already talked a bit about that, but it is as well flexibility. There was in the mode of delivery, whether it's full-time studying, part-time studying, dual studying, which is kind of a combination, and of course distance learning, which is already, it's not just a new thing in COVID or digital, but it exists for more than 100 years. Nothing new there. And in the Netherlands, we as well, and I'm not sure if this is as well everywhere the case, or in Czechia, we have the system in the Netherlands, we use the Latin term extraneus, but it's basically an external student. So you pay the institution and then you have the right to take a test. So you do not have the right to sit in classes, but you do have the right to take a test, and then you get a certificate for that one course. That certificate is not the same value, of course, as a degree. You could say it's a kind of a precursor to what we now call micro-credentials, maybe, but it was a system. Recognition of prior learning was already existing, usually through exemptions. Meaning, if you, as a student, thought, okay, I already can do this, I already know this, then you can go to your exam board and you ask for an exemption. You have to show a certificate, for instance, one that you did as an extraneus, to prove that you already did it, already had a test in it, and that you already proved it, and then you didn't have to do that subject anymore. So there was already quite some flexibility, and I suppose a lot of these things are happening, are possible here as well. So if we talk about flexibility, it's not all new. A lot of things already can happen. But there was a national experiment. I put this in. I think it was just before COVID, I heard a talk from someone from the OECD, and I thought it is relevant because it is about flexibilization of our institutions, basically, and of higher education in general. And of course, I don't know if you know, but they do research into the development of education, well, of a lot of things, but it's of education and of higher education, not just in Europe, but worldwide. Super interesting reports they write. And they notice that the value of degrees are decreasing, and the value of skills are way more important. So the qualification, the degree, the diploma, the paper, which basically traditionally gives you an entrance into the labor market, they noticed, well, it's getting less and less important. Employers are less looking at the paper, at the diploma, but they're looking at, do you actually have some skills that we can use? And that has consequences for us as institutions, and it's as well, of course, the precursor to micro-credentials and or badges. You already see, and I think it started in a digital world, in IT world, that you can have small learning units, and that you can have a badge that you put on LinkedIn or something to show a certain skill. And then as well, what I found very interesting is the functions of a higher education institution. And traditionally, those are three functions. It's qualification, so guaranteeing an individual that they have the right level, and putting a stamp on it, a seal on it. There's giving content, so knowledge and skills and attitude to the learner, and there is the guidance in the learning process. And those are three different functions, and well, traditionally, of course, they all three happen in our institution, but that's not necessarily the case, and you see it changing. There is private institutions that, for instance, say, we don't offer the content anymore. You can, as a learner, you can find it everywhere you want. We don't need that. So we guide you in your learning process. You have to find out the content wherever you want to find it out. We guide you in it, and at the end, we give you a diploma if you prove that you have it. So this is of course, as well, a form of flexibilization, with enormous consequences. And I don't think it's really clear which way it's going to develop, but there will be developments that I'm sure of, and the role of higher education institutions will quite drastically change, I think. And we have to find a way as institutions how we deal with it. But that is as an intermezzo. So the national experiments. The background is that it basically came from government. Government noticed that the labor market has needs that are not fulfilled by the graduates. There's not, so both in quantity and in quality. There's not enough lifelong learning. So upskilling, reskilling is not happening enough. So they designed 3 different experiments, basically not exactly with the same runtime, but the first started in 2016, and they lasted basically till this year. The last of the 3 experiments will end this year. So not all of them have been finished and not evaluated. And this is quite, so this is the first one. I brought a print of the details for if you have questions, because it's quite complicated, even for me to distinguish them. But there is the experiment that is called flex studying, that is for full-time students, and it's basically a paper credit system. So you can choose, as for full-time students, you can choose for, and this is designed basically at a target group is students who have other things in life they want to spend their energy and time on. Whether it's a sports like you mentioned before, or it's taking care of your family, children, or your older parents, or you have a business or whatever. So you can choose to pay well, basically per credit, as it says. My institution was cooperating with this, but only with 1 or 2 programs, so it's quite small. There was the experiment that was called Finance by Demand, and this was only for certain sectors. So they call them the sectors that are really in need of personnel at the last couple of years. So it's technical and healthcare. So there was an extra stimulation for people to study there. My institution didn't take part in this. So I don't know too much about it, actually. And then there's the experiment which was called the experiment for learning outcomes, or the learning outcomes experiment, and that is for part-time students. And I will go into that one more, because that is the most important to me, or at least to my institution, and I think we can learn the most from it as well in general. So it's colloquially called the flex part-time studies. If you ask anyone from the Netherlands, from at least from professional higher education, most people, most institutions took part in this experiment. What was the experiment exactly about? What was the design of the experiment? Well, for the most part, it was changing the mindset of institutions, of people in institutions, and to stimulate, well, this other mindset. And I'll come to that in a bit, which it exactly was. And there was a very small legal change. So for the runtime of the experiment, what they did was they decoupled the ECTS credits from study load. As you might know, I don't know if how deep you are into the ECTS system and the ECTS user guide, but usually 1 ECTS credit is translated to study load of 24 to 28 hours. and that is put in law in the Netherlands, I think, as in most countries. What they did for the runtime of this experiment, that they decoupled this, and I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I did read the experiment, like how you call it? It's not a law, but the legal framework. As far as I understood, this is the only really legal part of the experiment. For the rest, it was just, well, PR basically. Important, but not really consequential. This one was. So what did we do in my institution? First, we had an overall approach. We approach it quite centralistically, I would say. Usually, we have all those. We have 20 departments which run all those programs. They have a lot of individual freedom, but this experiment we took we approached quite centrally. And our basic thought was, we experiment as much as we can, because we wanna go all out and we wanna learn from it. It's an experiment, so it's okay if it fails, because then we learn from it as well. Luckily, by the way, our National Accreditation Agency and the Ministry and the Inspectorate, they all agreed with that. I mean, they called it an experiment as well. So we went for maximum flexibility. So we were flexible in starting moments. At least every program that took part in it had to have 4 starting moments. Make possible that the students start in 4 different moments, which as well, by the way, meant that there were no really cohorts anymore, because you started whenever. The speed of learning, so you can go faster, you can go slower. There is no more nominal studying, no more 60 ECTS credits per year. Well, you do whatever, slower, faster, whatever you want. The order in which you do the courses, you can choose as a student. If you want to take this course first, because if you think that you're ready for it, go ahead. Whatever you want. I mean, there's some exceptions, of course. Let's see if I can come up with an exception. Well, I guess if you design a building, you probably want to make sure that you know how to design the foundation before you design like the whole thing. Something like that. I don't know. So there's in some specific fields of study had some requirements for order, but in general it was there was no order. Flexibility as well in way of proving the learning outcomes for students. And I'll come back to that in a bit. What we as well said is voluntary. So 36 of our part-time programs took part in it. That's way not all. So it was their own choice. We gave them the possibility. Some said yes, we want to do that. Some said no, this is too much work. We're busy with other things. We don't need it. Our students don't need it. Our world of work don't need it. Fine, it's voluntary. We created a learning community for the people, not just the managers, but all the teacher teams. We created a learning community so they could learn with each other and from each other in how they did this experiment. And we standardized quite a lot. So we made our own framework for flexibilization. And I don't know if this sounds counterintuitive, but so the more you the more you make things flexible, the more you need standardization. So what did we standardize? First of all, there was with every student there was an individual learning contract. So there's intake and matching. So before the student is starting, there was an individual conversation with every individual student on so they know what they could expect. And as well that they would give an advice. So if the student said that yes, they want to do it, and the teacher who did that intake said, well, we don't think this is very wise for you, we gave them a negative advice. They could ignore it, but it's an advice. So we cannot, by law, say no to students. So, but we can give them a negative advice. And every year this learning contract was renewed. Or basically it was a new learning contract, because what was in the learning contract as well says what the student is planning to do, which well, and even the word courses I don't really should use here, but which learning activities the student was planning to do, which tests the student was going to take, in which order, and so on. Which level of guidance the student thought he or she needed as well. That was the learning contract as well. What we standardized as well is that said to the programs, you need to redesign your curriculum, and this is all about alignment. Now, to be honest, I was very surprised. I came in my institution in 2016, so we were really beginning, and I saw this requirement that they had to redesign their curriculum in order to be aligned. I really said, why? Isn't that the first thing you do if you design a curriculum? But they said, well, no, because we have these old traditional study fields and programs, and they exist for I don't know 20, 30 years. They just do because they think this course is important, so we put this in, and so I mean that is how it goes. So now they really had to rethink the whole curriculum. What is our intended learning outcomes, and then walking it back. How do we test those learning outcomes, and what kind of learning activities should we offer for the students in order for them to be able to get there? It was just said as well, we had a minimum of 5 ECTS credits per unit. So the word course here is no longer relevant. As I said, it's a unit. Exactly what was mentioned before, because if it's a 1 or 2 credit units, that doesn't work for learning outcomes. There were learning route independent exams and learning route independent assessments. This was important as well. So we said it is the students should be able to take an exam independent of the way that they learn. So if they go to classes or read themselves or do whatever on YouTube, or it should be learning route independent. The exams means that the examination or the test has been made by the teachers, has been designed by the teachers in order for the student to prove the learning outcomes. The assessment, there we say, and this wasn't obligatory, by the way, for the second one. The assessment was not obligatory for programs, and quite a lot of programs didn't choose for this, because what it means is that we tell the student what the intended learning outcomes are, and we say, well, go ahead and prove that you are able to show that you acquired these. So there is no more standardized test for them. We invite the student to come up with their own portfolio or whatever it is, ways of proving their that they reach the learning outcomes. That is quite complicated. It turned out to assure that, for instance, but and a lot of programs didn't do that because they thought it was too complicated for their teachers. Recognition of prior learning, we stopped with exemptions. No more exemptions. Even if you have a certificate, what we said is there's learning route independent assessment or exams. So if you claim that you already know it, well, then it should be very easy to take the exam. You don't have to sit in class. You don't have to just take the exam or the assessment. But we're not giving exemptions out anymore. And as well, so not all our programs work with competence-based learning outcomes. And I'm not an educational specialist, so if it's getting very technical, I'm not exactly sure what the differences are between learning outcomes and competences, and there are 1 or 2 more of those, and which I always think is more or less the same, and then people who studied educational sciences, they say there's a difference, which I immediately believe then. But what we said, if it's competence-based, then you auto-prove lower levels. So usually, especially in the bachelor, we work with 3 levels. So beginner's level, intermediate, and then basically the level that you need to have to prove your learning outcomes. If you prove something on level 2, that automatically means that you proved on level 1. Or in 3, that you proved on 2 and 1. So if you think that you can, that you're already proficient, then you take the exam or the assessment in level 3, and then automatically you get your credits for the level 1 and level 2 units. If it's exactly the same competences, but just on a higher level. Well, that was the plan. Now, and coming from PDCA, of course, what they're doing, that they well, I'm not from an educational program, I'm from the central QA team. So that was for the programs. But we checked, of course, what happened and what we learned from that. And I divided that in 3 categories, basically what we learned internally, what it brought the student, and what it did externally. So we all saw it was very useful internally, especially that alignment, that all the programs, all the teacher teams were obliged to rethink their curriculum and to critically align their testing, their educational offer with the intended learning outcomes. So they were thinking, well, now I'm rereading this, might be a bit arrogant, but they started to to think more and deeper about what they were actually doing in their program. Goals, learning outcomes, alignment, yes. It did cost a lot of work and a lot of energy. We have to be honest about that. It wasn't an easy ride, but the good thing was that the support staff, the central staff, and not just the quality team, but as well we have we call it a teaching and learning network. So there's where the educational specialists are. They were involved way more with the program, with the teacher teams, and that's really a win. It's more work for everybody. It costs a lot of time and energy, but we are able to find each other now, and that is a lasting effect, and that is really, really good. What we as well learned internally, that everybody should be involved, because it touches everything, almost everything. So not just the support staff is in quality or the. So one thing is that we found out that so we have in the Netherlands, this is as well by law, is we have exam boards, I think should be the translation. And that exam board, so the president of the exam board puts their signature on the diploma, on the degree. So they guarantee the level of the student, basically. And so that they really have to check the level. So, and as well the whole testing, that the testing is valid, is reliable, and so on. In the beginning of this experiment, everybody thought, well, it's about the educational team, about the teachers, about curriculum design, about aligning. So everybody went to work there, and a lot of programs actually forgot to include the people from the examination boards. But of course they have to assure it. They in the end have to put their signature on the diploma to guarantee the level. So they have to know that those tests and assessments are valid, reliable, and so on. So that well, everybody should be involved. The students, so most students were not interested. Yeah, that is, it's a bit stupid, especially not in going faster. There were some students who went faster, but there were quite some students who wanted to go slower. But for most students, they just said, well, like it was said here before, just give me my schedule, just give me my program, and I'll go through the steps one thing at a time, one step at a time. I'm fine with it. I don't need to, design my whole learning pathway. Get away from me, leave me alone. Yeah, that's true. But what they did do is they benefited, because the whole study career guide, so the coaching was improved, and we had to, because we had to do all those individual talks, those learning agreements. So we were way better in contact. We started to be way better in contact with the students and guide them on the learning pathway. So even if the students didn't want to go faster or slower, they still benefited from that guidance. Now externally, Yeah, so inter-institutional flexibility, like one student going to a different institution for one course, for instance, that basically did not work. Why didn't it work? Because all the institutions did it their own way. I now showed you what we did in Utrecht. Other institutions took different approaches. So basically, it made it only harder to for a student to go to a different institution to take a course or acquire some ECTS credits. So that seriously did not work. And then, of course, the real big question is: did we reach the goals the experiment was designed for? Are there more students now in reskilling, upskilling, and so on? Well, the honest answer is we don't know. That's partly because the evaluation is not out yet, but as well, so much things happen in the meantime. And I'm not just talking about COVID, but the whole labor market changed so drastically. Partially because of COVID, but partially about independent factors. I think about demographics. I don't know. So I don't have an answer to this. Did we reach the goals? To be honest, but we did apply some of our lessons that we learned in the full-time programs and as well in general in our institution. So that alignment, we focus way more on alignment as well in full-time programs. We work with learning outcomes. The whole institution decided, and this is a centrally made choice, everybody, all programs, whether it be short cycle higher education till masters, full-time, part-time, doesn't matter, everybody is going to work with learning outcomes. And as well, by the way, have to redesign because of that. There is more creativity in testing. Those learning, what do they call, learning route, learning pathway, independent tests, really stimulated the assessors and the examinator teachers to be more creative in testing. So we upskilled our teachers, if only that. This is the teaching and learning network. As I just said, they are more active. They were, well, they were good people, but they weren't super proactive. They are now. So that's good. In general, we have a more and better conversations about education. What is it exactly that you want? What is the purpose of your program, basically? And what does it mean for how you design your program? And especially coming from quality assurance, I love this effect. This is such a great effect. Because of this, we really, I think, developed the mindset for new developments. And there are, of course, I think at least 2 major developments coming towards us, and I suppose they as well are coming towards you or already are here. So the one, of course, is micro-credentials, which is basically the same, but even going further. There's other problems with that, or challenges maybe. But I'm convinced that because we did this experiment, we are better prepared to face this future. The other future we are facing is the European University Alliance. So I don't know how many of you and your institutions are in alliances. My institution is not yet. That is to say, we applied in the last round in February, so we will hear the conclusion of the application somewhere in early summer probably. But there we need a lot of, if that happens, then of course we need a lot of flexibility in order to exchange with our partners. And this one I just included, what is it? I think inspired by the last session. So we as well have a more flexible indicator for what quality is. And we went from study success, that is the traditional indicator, well, one of the traditional indicators for quality in higher education, meaning basically efficiency. Like I heard already people talk about dropout rates and how many students, or what's the rate of students that have their diploma within, well, X years or X plus 1. We call that study success. We went to student success. So it's not about that internal efficiency, it's about, is the student successful? And one thing I really like about this, and this is as well hard for our teacher teams actually, is that we do not work with dropout rates anymore. That is to say, dropout rates from the program. We allow dropouts from the program, as long as this is a dropout rate, dropout from the system. So this is one of our important indicators now. We say, and this is for about first year students. If a student that comes into the program, bachelor programs, for the first time, after a year, is the student still in the higher education system? If that is the case, we're happy. So it doesn't matter if he or she changes his program, only if he or she drops out of the whole system and is no longer studying anywhere, then we think that is not a success. So that is making it, of course, way more flexible, because it doesn't matter if the student is still studying the program he or she started with, or in a different institution. We are flexible in that. So I wanted to include that. And basically, I hope I'm more or less in time. No, not really, I see. Sorry. But I hope it was interesting.
Thank you very much. I guess it was very interesting. I would like to ask Jakub if we can prepare a second presentation. Now we will move to New Zealand. Good thing is that we are focusing on system which is really focusing on student success, if I understand from Monika. And Monika is also good information, and she was in the also nice system, because one of her colleagues is currently Minister of Education. He was discussing to invite her, but you know, as she already Czech Minister is busy, but we have also plus the time zone movement, so it's will be more challenging. Yeah, and she'll be in morning, so I think we should not be happy so much. So I'm happy that we have Monika, and she will introduce you New Zealand, the flexibility of Kiwis.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm really glad to be here. And as we say in New Zealand, kia ora. That means hello in Maori. And who is a fan of Lord of the Rings? Okay. Oh, perfect. And do you know what is the most popular sport in New Zealand? Rugby and All Blacks. So that's all you need to know if you go there. And then you are friend with everyone. Now I would like to tell you a little bit more about my personal story, because I spent 13 years in New Zealand in different jobs for different tertiary institutions, and came back at the end of 2022, so relatively recently. And just would like to share with you what was interesting for me, what was surprising, what I find out about New Zealand system, and it actually corresponds with the topic of this conference, because I don't know how well or how familiar you are with New Zealand geography, but it's a very small country at the end of the world. It's like then is only Antarctica, nothing else behind New Zealand, very far from here. Actually, the size is approximately of UK, United Kingdom, and they have 5 million people. So about half population of the Czech Republic. And it means the density is probably, I don't know what we have in Czech Republic, what's the population density, but it's about 10 times less in New Zealand than here. And you might find areas like this beautiful picture up there, it's Fiordland, and population density in Southland, that I was the southernmost university in the world when I was located for a year and a half. They have population density 4 people per square kilometer in that region. So it gives you a little bit of context how education is challenging there. We always start with learner personas in New Zealand. So basically, everything starts with for whom we are doing our teaching or doing our learning process, let's say. And so I was just thinking, I should say some of my typical learners, because it's really diverse there. And just wanted to give you an overview that the 3 types of my learners. There's a young graduates, as most of us deal with. The only difference between young New Zealanders and Czechs is that they have a like a tradition of, they call big OE, overseas experience. So very often after high school, they go to Australia, Europe, US, UK, different countries. But some of them just don't want to drop completely from education. So they study on distance. They study part-time. Part-time studying is actually very popular there. Most learners study I would say 75% of learners study part-time. Then there's a large international student population. New Zealand is one of the countries where a lot of people go for tertiary education, especially from Asia, but also we had pretty much people from all around the world. I remember that I had classes where I had 16 different nationalities in one class, to be fair, about 1/4 of New Zealanders, so a little bit over 1 million, are immigrants. They were not born in New Zealand. And approximately 60% of people, they had parents and grandparents not being born in New Zealand. So it's basically a pot of different cultures. So that's something that is also something that needs to be considered. And lot of mature learners, as we call them. That's the gentleman over there, that basically they started early to work for different reasons. They didn't have time to go to university, but after some time they just realized they need education and they come back. So typically in their late 30s, early 40s, they just decide, sometimes work circumstances, or sometimes they just say, it's always been my dream, I want to fulfill it now. I have stable income, or I have my own business, so I'm well financially supported. It's not a cheap thing in New Zealand to be educated, and now I can afford it. So they can study on distance. They can study, of course, full-time in a classroom, or they have something that is called recognition of prior learning. So basically, if you have skills that are required for the certain degree, that you prepare for a special examination, and you can actually earn it based on your experience and proof. You need to provide evidences, of course, but that you have those skills and you can actually get the degree that way. And why I was actually in New Zealand, what been always a dream of mine to live somewhere else for some time and see how it works in a different part of the world. And New Zealand is actually well known for its education system, especially the tertiary education system. So I just wanted to know, why is it so good? Why so many people actually go to study there? Because after agriculture and tourism, this is the most profitable area for the country to get their income, especially for the international students. So that was the motivation. So what did I find out when I got there? It was a culture shock. So despite the fact that I had usually anything between like 25 and 150 students in a class. You never know how many. There was a flexibility of the system, because as long as you had students, you were just teaching them. So you had to be ready for any number of students, pretty much. and it was required that it will be interactive. Students in New Zealand are highly demanding. They just expect individual treatment, and they expect you that you know their names. They expect that you know something about them, their preferences, their needs, and you're expected to respond to that. And with this significant diversity, as I told you, it's not just nationalities, it's also age, because you can have 17-year-olds, and you can have my oldest my oldest learner was 76. And when I asked him what motivated him, he said, "I want to have a degree before I die." That's my mother. And what was also interesting was the way we worked, because I was used from the Czech Republic, and I was working for really good universities like Czech Technical University and University of Economics, that we are pretty much independent. In New Zealand, you work in teams, and every semester we get together, we discuss briefly who's doing what, we check assessments of each other, we put feedback. So the preparation is actually really important. I will talk about it a little bit later. Never ever we cancel classes. So if someone's sick, someone else needs to come and be ready to provide like a really good class on maybe. So it explains why we need to work in clusters, because you are not just expected to be an expert in your own topic, but you are expected to know what your colleagues are teaching, so you can actually replace them if needed. Because there's nothing is more priority than learners, and basically they expect to come to school that particular time and the particular day, so they will get classes whatever happens. Yeah, I already said preparation and reviews. After each semester, there was like a 2-day session for the whole program that we got together. We were discussing all the data from the classes, so dropouts, passes, fails, problems, what worked, what didn't work, was it difficult, was it should be there in changes, and basically we were expected to improve the classes for the next round. So that's a little bit different way than I was used to. I had to contribute to my institution reputation, and we wanted to be very friendly to any potential learner. And who was the potential learner? Pretty much anyone. So if someone was staying in front of a university and looking around, you were actually expected to say, "Hello, can I help you? Do you have any, problems that I can?" And if they had a little bit sign of they could be potentially a student of our university, no matter which area, I could be in business, but they could be interested in architecture, I was actually expected that I'm going to direct them into the right department. And of course, there was a lot of requests to be flexible and efficient as well, because, for example, just to give you, it was a lot of hours that I didn't expect to have, having the experience from Czech Republic. Like if I have my thesis students, we were expected to consult. Doesn't matter, it could be online, could be in person, whatever. But we were expected to consult every single week, and the formative assessments were really important. So we had usually 3-4 assessments within semester, and students were expected. So we were expected to provide feedback within 1 week after submission. So relatively demanding. So I learned. I had to learn a lot, and it took me 13 years actually to go through the system. This was actually very interesting. When I started the very first year, very first job, this is what my job, what my supervisor told me, my boss. She said, "You have 2 jobs. One job is, the more important one, is that you need to help them to start to love learning, because this is what they are going to need for the rest of their life, and we want them to come back. So that's the top mission. Meanwhile, you are expected that they will meet the learning outcomes of your class, and it's completely up to you how you do it. So, find out what's your efficient way of doing it, find out what they like, find out how they learn, find out, what's authentic way of delivery, and do your best. And of course, you know, with such a diversity, there was probably no single class I was teaching the same way. So yeah, and also there was, it's not a phrase, but most educators in New Zealand really believe that they change the lives of their learners. And to give you just one example, I had a Maori lady, and she was not the fastest learner. I spent really good portion of hours consulting her. And meanwhile, because you're expected to learn a lot about not just the professional interests of your learner, but all the background and everything, I find out that she was born in Chatham Islands. So if you Google, Chatham Islands are very remote islands, you know, even for New Zealand, it's remote. And she was the very first graduate, was on a bachelor degree from Chatham Islands. So the whole population of Chatham Islands, they hired a boat and they came to Christchurch for her graduation because this was the historic moment for Chatham Islands. And now she is actually a CEO of some fishery company there, and really lovely lady. Okay, how we do that, you know? Of course, that's a nice mission, yes, but what is nice, how it's much more complicated. And what I find out, no matter which institution I used to work for, there were always 3, 4 key things that were true for each of them. First of all, and this was the #1 priority every time, was learner-centered approach. Anything what you were doing was how it contributes to your learner success. How does it help your learners? And individual's choice, best value for money, best value for time. So basically those were the key questions. Outcome-based learning. We mentioned many times graduate profile and learning outcomes and so on. And only in New Zealand I actually find out how the system really works. And that, I might tell you a little bit later about it, probably privately, because we don't have time for that. But it's completely different than I was able to use, or I was able to design courses here. In New Zealand, you do it the other way around, completely differently. So learning, graduate profile and learning outcomes, it probably usually takes about a year to put it all together because it must be aligned. And what we have that every course has specific learning outcomes, and they need to be tied up to specific things in graduate profile. And you need to create a map, and you need to show how well each part of the graduate profile is covered with each particular course. If it doesn't fit, you need to bring different course. If it's not, if there are few things that are not covered as well, you need to create evidences that they are actually covered in the learning outcomes. And there was a lot of stress on skills and on those, how do we call it in Czech? The competencies, basically the general competencies. So, and you need to show in which courses you actually cover them. So even if there's like a communication or teamwork, you know exactly in which courses you check it, and you need to have assessments designed in such a way that you do that. So constructive alignment, this is what it's called. and everything is very practical. There was used active learning. So very often students were given a problem or case, and they were trying to find a solution. Then you help them with few indications, and then they were more skilled and they were able to do it faster. And what was the result? That after a few months, students actually started to come well prepared for the classes because they knew they will be the stars, because they already knew the theory. So there was basically, we didn't teach much theory in classes. They were expected to do it on their own and bring the knowledge already into the classroom, and just, you know, we just work with that. It's called flipped classroom. I'm sure that most of you know about that. But they were able to get motivated for that after some time. Okay. When I was preparing for this conference, I was actually thinking how to best describe how to describe the flexibility in New Zealand education system in the best way, and it's pretty much flexibility for or from people within very effective system. And the system is really important there, because I don't believe that you can be flexible if you don't have a good system. And there are a lot of bodies that are contributing to the system, so very similar to our now New Zealand Qualification Authority. They supervise quality, and they set up a base for the New Zealand Qualification and Credentials Framework. They use level 1 to 10, and just Google it, because it's easy to find. It's very simple, actually. It's easy to orient in it. What I find personally really good was Central Registry of achievements, because in New Zealand there's such a system that if you start to study bachelor degree and you need to finish for any reason, or you need to you know, take a break for a year or two, you are actually fine. You still can keep your achievements from certain courses. And if you continue within 5 years, you can actually complete the whole program without any problem. The other thing is that, for example, bachelor program of 3 years, after first year, you are entitled to get certificate. After 2 years, you get diploma. And after 3 years, if you are successful, you get the whole degree. So you always leave the school with something. It's not like that if you don't write your thesis, you just you know, throw 3 years of dedicated work out of the window. There's a lot of experience with distance learning. Now it's mostly online, but some of you my age might remember Australian series Skip the Bush Kangaroo. Yeah, so there was a distance learning on radio and correspondence, so they have a long tradition, and distance learning is a huge part of the tertiary system. So easier now because you can do it. So they actually find distance learning very comfortable now. Micro-credentials, I think I don't need to add anything. We had a really good presentation here. Assessment of prior learning, I think I talk about that as well. And on the top of that, because they have so many international students, there's also the recognition of international assessments, qualification assessments, and that all actually creates the base for the system. So what are the fixed parts? And I will try to be really brief here. What basically you don't touch unless you have a really good reason. And this is the graduate profile. Do you know who sets up the graduate profile in New Zealand? No. That would be too adventurous. But it's a long consultancy, and there are a lot of different stakeholders, mostly employers, future employers of the graduates, but also professional bodies. I don't know, I was from business, so we had different Chamber of Commerce, or Ministry of Trade, yeah, and so on. And you consult all those different bodies to say which employers do you want, what they should have on the bachelor degree, on the master degree, and they tell you, and then of course you need to tidy up a little bit, and then the university has a task to put together the courses that actually fulfill the profile as well. So learning outcomes, that's another thing that doesn't change very much, again, unless there's a really a good reason. And the last one are the assessments. Interestingly, you just need to say how approximately how are you going to make sure that the learning outcomes are met. All learning outcomes must be met, and you can give 2-3 options. Students even can choose, but you must prove that the learning outcomes are really matching well the assessments. In other words, if it's skill, it cannot be measured by test. It must be portfolio, project, something else. It must be relevant to and they use Bloom taxonomy. So it's not just the action verbs, but also the cognitive level that is appropriate to the level. Okay, what are the flexible parts? Basically, people and content. And it was a very painful finding for me that actually content is the most fluid and most flexible thing in the whole system. And you're actually expected to change it. And again, on the top of the diversity, New Zealand believes that everybody has a chance, should have a chance to study, so you get people with different type of disabilities, and you need to be ready for that. So for example, for distance learning, you must have option if people are blind, are not able to read, how are you going to meet their needs and so on. Yeah, so that's it pretty much. And the final thing, that was my huge discovery. I think you will be laughing, but I actually find out the flexibility started with me as a lecturer. And once I start to be a little bit more flexible, everything becomes easier. And it doesn't matter if it was that I had to actually enhance my field of expertise, that I need to understand the context. I need to know really well how my graduate profile looks like, and and everything, how it fits, and what colleague is teaching, because I'm actually developing what students are already being taught in that class. I think again, I don't need to tell you that technology is fast developing as well. So like I don't know how many of you have a experience with the real hybrid class, that you might be having people in your classroom and you might have other few classrooms on the screens. That's crazy, and they're supposed to interact and they're supposed to work in groups. Deal with relatively small and irrelevant issues. Sometimes it looks like a small thing and students are complaining and you don't have time, you have so many things to do, but I just learned that even the small things are important, and we need to deal with that. Some things are unexpected. I don't know if you remember, there was a mass shooting in a mosque in 2000, what was it, 17 I think, 19, and it actually was about 200 meters from our campus. And of course, it had a huge impact on my students. And there was a huge earthquake in Christchurch. Then there was this tragedy, and then we had COVID. So you just learn to go with whatever happens. And sometimes it can be overwhelming, and it's absolutely okay to feel overwhelmed. We are not superheroes. We are human beings. And sometimes the help can come even from very unexpected parts, like my learners. and I just learned that things need to be discussed, and we are not enemies, we are friends, and we have common goals actually to help them to be successful. And welcome new challenge and enjoy new adventures. So if there's anyone who would like to get a New Zealand teaching experience, let me know. I have really good contacts there now, a lot of friends, and they are always keen to get good lecturers from Czech Republic. So thank you very much for your attention.
So I hope that you enjoyed, even we are a little flexible in time, and so the Jakub is already open window if somebody would like to move. But it depends. I hope that we have still some time for question, depending on our conference CEO. Don't worry. I think food will be enough. Even we know, and drinks also. Only some people left, so don't worry. And even we know that what is faster than the speed of light is the academic during the coffee break. I believe they still have some time, hunger for some questions. So I don't know, could we have a couple of questions? Yeah, definitely. Before we will move to 5 minutes. So, okay, so any questions? Yeah, Karel has the first one.
Okay, thank you. I have a question for Eltio. There was a super interesting presentation. Thank you for it. You live in a wonderful world where your government encourages you to do experiments lasting for 8 years and perhaps funding the experiments. That's interesting. And for us, it's good that you did it also for us, because the lessons learned are interesting for us. And some of them were kind of confirming our intuition from the earlier debates today. I mean, for example, that the individual student paths, introduction of these paths, individual contracts, you said, is very demanding, you know, on both, you know, institutions and people, tutoring, mentoring, and also that the students are usually not very interested. That was also our intuition. But what was very interesting and counterintuitive was these, when you started with the decoupling of ECTS with curriculum. You know, that originally this was meant to be instrument, you know, to help students to have kind of flexible curriculum, ECTS. I mean, in Europe, you know. Now it is a kind of further step, I think, that we can, you know, change this this kind of paradigm. And you said also that you tried to decouple kind of content from within the curriculum, content and outcomes. You know, that that the content was meant to be studied. I mean, in any way that the focus is on outcomes. And this is, I think, quite a revolutionary idea, you know, that you just follow, you know, the outcomes, and you leave the students, you know, to learn in a different way and maybe to help them. I think this could change, I think, the university and higher education institutions. So my question would be, how did it work, actually, you know? I mean these the coupling of the content, or if I understand it well.
Yeah, if I think basically it's not so revolutionary, because it's the same as Monica said. It's a flipped classroom. So we basically we say the content is there. Of course, the content is part of what you need to learn, but it's not necessarily what we need to give to you as a learner. Because as a learner, you can get it everywhere. It's not that we as a university, as a knowledge institution, are the source of all knowledge. You can go on your own to a library, or go to the internet, or go to whomever you want. The content, the knowledge, is everywhere. So yeah, you can go to us. We will provide it. We give classes, no problem. But if you want to get it somewhere else, go get it somewhere else. So it's basically the same as a flipped classroom, but maybe indeed a bit more extreme, in the sense that we don't say, you know, before you come to a class, read chapter 2 and 3. But basically it's the same concept, but just taken one step further, I think.
And what were the lessons learned from this approach?
What were the lessons learned from that? Well, that actually the same as how much students want to be flexible, that a lot of students don't like that, because they need to think more than they already need. Yeah. So if you're just told, okay, read chapter 2 and 3, you can complain about that, and it's a lot of work and whatever. You have less free time to hang out with friends, but you know what you do, and you just execute it. But if the learning outcome says, okay, you need to have knowledge about Gandalf, yeah, okay. That is the example, apparently. And go find it somewhere. Then they have to think okay, I have to, so where could I find it? Where's the best way to find it? Is there a difference between the different sources of information? So, I mean, and that, I would say it's a super important skill if you learn that as a student, but that is usually not indeed in the learning outcomes. I mean, in the Dublin descriptors it is, I would say, in a way, you know, to self-regulate your own learning process. But that's quite advanced already. That's usually not in the bachelor, especially not at the beginning of the bachelor. So you have to as well teach the students on how to do that. But especially in the beginning, that's very hard for students. They just say, okay, just whatever, just tell me what I need to read. You know. Most students.
Any other question?
It's me again. Can you hear me? Yeah. A question to both of you. It's not directed to what you said, but to the knowledge of the context of the two countries you were talking about. Are you aware whether there are professions in your countries that are missing because universities don't have the possibilities or students are not interested in studying those programs? Because we were talking about the need for some medical professions or teachers. So my question would be that whether there is some kind of lack of some professions, and I wouldn't ask how the country deals with it, but if you are aware of that. Thank you.
Yes, New Zealand has a good system because there's a lot of immigration, a lot of people who wants to come to New Zealand. So for immigration purposes, they have a long-term skill shortage and a short-term skill shortage, those lists. And based on them, they select not just immigrants, but they also, there's another reason why is immigration. The other reason is they set up funding for universities based on, they don't fund everything, students pay for their education, but they contribute to programs that basically fulfill this long-term skill shortages.
Yeah, and that's roughly the same in the Netherlands. So I heard here in the system debate that the quality checks and the financial checks, they go hand in hand, right? If I understood correctly. But oh no, maybe not. Okay. But in the Netherlands, this is almost completely separated. So if we, as a university, want to start a new program, we first have to go to what is called a macro efficiency check. So if we want to use public money, taxpayers' money, to spend on, you know, building a program, we need to prove that it is worth putting taxpayer money in it, and that is the reason that we have lack of certain students and graduates. So it's, I mean, in a way, it's not a lack of profession because the profession is there, but we as a university cannot prove that macro efficiency. And the problem is with macro efficiency rules, because one of the and this is mostly about relatively new professions. So, for instance, we had one program in what was it? Sustainable business transition. We kind of know ourselves there is a need for professional sustainable business transition professionals. We hear that from you know, the professional network, the professional surrounding. Those people are needed. But we cannot prove that, because one of the things we have to prove is that there's job openings. So we basically, when we apply for macro efficiency, we have to say, listen, so here's, you see, here's a job opening, and here's a job opening, and here's a job opening, and they ask for this profession. But that profession doesn't really exist yet, so we cannot prove that. So we're not funded, which is very problematic.
Yeah, I think, and generally, you just remember that from study from Deloitte 2020, they ask employers, what kind of skills do you need from your employers in 3 years? Only 17% of companies know it, or knew it at the time. So we need to be also flexible and is forecasting because things are changing. Okay, any other question, or you want? There is a.
Gabriela Achternováček, Technical University. Maybe question for Monica. Again, great presentation. What is approximately, let's say, it seemed that it was ideal life of a teacher that you had your full time, what you could dedicate to the teaching, but it's absolutely out of the scope of our reality, to be honest. Well, it's really minority of our time what we can. So just to have an idea, what approximately was the time what you spent with your students, or what were your teaching duties?
Oh, that's so hard to say, because I was teaching at 4 different schools, so it was a little bit different everywhere. But if they did everything possible that we can spend as much time with our learners as we could. Yeah. So we had a lot of support. That's true. I think there are 2 things. If I could influence a little bit our system here. So one thing, what I would suggest is what was really helpful for us were learning designers. There's a profession that doesn't exist in the Czech Republic, but it just helped us enormously as lecturers. Actually, later on, I did the course myself, because the program myself, because I just find it so helpful. And I think you, as if you are mostly lecturers here, have a look. What does it mean, learning design and outcome-based learning? Because it just changes completely, my life. So that's one thing. And yeah, and the other thing is probably, if someone like now could help us with the system, because if the system is good, then you have a lot of time, to make nice programs, nice courses, consult with learners, and of course, check specifics. And I'm completely aware of that it starts and ends with finances, that you can only do as much as you can afford. And but I don't have solution for that, unfortunately. I wish I could, but yeah. But maybe 90% of my work was with learners. Yeah.
Okay, so CEO of conference showing the time is up. Just maybe one thing and one small advancements and forecast, and also a little challenge for Monica, because Monica is nearly finishing the book about learning outcomes and learning design. So I hope next incoming, so we give her some challenge. So I hope that in a couple of months you will be able to read it. So you can ask her more, but maybe, yeah. I always know that she likes challenges. So that's one forecast. I hope that you can do it. I would like to thank you for your attention. I know it was a long day, and now you would deserve time to think about a little more deeply and digest your thoughts, and during getting good food and good wine, and some also musical program, which I will say more. Yes, okay, yeah, it's nearly run, some kind of music. I would like to also thank Jakub for great support with techniques, and also another colleagues from Katka. Without that, we will be not here. So that's special thanks and special applause for her. Her team. And then final word, she will give you some more information. What would be next?
For today, final word, it's please continue with discussions and interesting things and thoughts during consuming wine and great food. So please follow my colleague Katka, second Katka. A jenom ve zkratce organizační záležitost pro ty, kteří jsou ubytováni v univerzitním centru v Telči. V 7:30 snídaně v jídelně, do 9 prosím vyklidit pokoje a kufry si můžete nechat v U8. Děkuji, hezký večer. Thank you very much.